Imagine a world where money was a promise. A promise backed by something real, something tangible. For centuries, that something was gold. You could walk into a bank, hand over your paper money, and walk out with its equivalent weight in gold. That was the deal. That was the gold standard. It was a system built on trust, yes, but also on a physical anchor. It limited how much money a government could create. It kept spending in check. It provided a sense of security, a store of value that was universally recognized and respected. For the average person, this meant their savings were safe. The money they earned and put away held its worth. It was a solid foundation upon which they could build their lives, plan for the future, and secure their family's prosperity. This system wasn't perfect, but it had a built-in discipline. It forced governments to be fiscally responsible. They couldn't just print money to fund their ambitions, their wars, or their political promises. They were tied to the amount of gold in their vaults. This created a relatively stable economic environment where inflation was a temporary anomaly, not a constant feature of life. But in the 20th century, that all began to change. The pressures of 2 world wars and the Great Depression pushed this system to its breaking point. Governments needed more. More money to fund massive armies, more money to rebuild shattered nations, and more money to stimulate collapsing economies. The rigid constraints of the gold standard became a barrier, a chain holding them back. So one by one they began to chip away at it. First, they suspended convertibility for their own citizens, meaning you could no longer exchange your paper money for gold. Then, the final link was severed. In 1971, the United States officially ended the international convertibility of the US dollar to gold. This single act, known as the Nixon shock, didn't just change American policy. It fundamentally altered the entire global financial system. The anchor was gone. For the first time in modern history, the world's major currencies were backed by nothing but a promise from the government that issued them. This new type of money is called fiat currency, from the Latin word fiat meaning let it be done. Money was now money simply because the government declared it so. A new era had begun, an era of unlimited money creation, an era where the rules of the game were completely rewritten, and most people didn't even notice the ground shifting beneath their feet. This changed everything. With the shackles of gold removed, governments could now create money out of thin air. An unlimited supply. It was like discovering a cheat code for the economy. They could finance wars without raising taxes. They could bail out failing banks and corporations to prevent economic collapses. They could spend on massive social programs. They could try to steer and control the entire economy with the pull of a lever in the central bank. The power was immense. But with great power comes great instability. The very thing that made the new system so flexible also made it incredibly fragile. The permanent risk of inflation was now baked into the system. When you can create money endlessly, the value of each individual dollar, pound, or euro is constantly under threat. Your savings, the money you worked hard for and put aside, began to lose its purchasing power, slowly at first, then sometimes dramatically. Your wealth was no longer a solid object you held. It was more like an ice cube melting in the sun. The system that was meant to provide security became a source of constant low-level anxiety. Most people never really questioned it. We grew up in this new world. We trusted the money in our pockets. We continued to work for it, save it, and plan our futures with it. We saw the numbers in our bank accounts go up and felt secure. But the foundation had been swapped out. Money was no longer primarily a store of value, a way to preserve wealth over time. It had become a tool of policy, a mechanism of control. Strength, its value, its very existence, now depended entirely on one thing: confidence. The collective belief that this piece of paper, or these digits on a screen, are worth something. And as history teaches us, confidence is the most fickle and fragile commodity of all. It can be built over decades and shattered in an instant. This shift wasn't a sudden discovery. It's a story as old as civilization itself. Temptation to debase the currency is a recurring theme throughout history. Take ancient Rome. At its height, the Roman denarius was a silver coin trusted across the known world. But as the empire expanded, its expenses grew. Wars, massive infrastructure projects, and a sprawling bureaucracy all needed to be paid for. The supply of new silver couldn't keep up. So the emperors found a clever solution. He started mixing the silver with cheaper base metals like copper. At first it was a small amount, barely noticeable. A coin that was 95% silver became 90%, then 80%, then 50%. For a while it worked. They could mint more coins and pay their soldiers in bills, but people aren't stupid. Eventually, merchants and citizens realized that the new coins weren't as valuable as the old ones. They started demanding more coins for the same goods. This is inflation in its most basic form. Trust in the denarius eroded. The currency collapse that followed was a major factor in the economic instability that contributed to the eventual fall of the Western Roman Empire. The story repeated itself across centuries and continents. In medieval China, the world's first paper money was introduced, but dynasties repeatedly printed too much of it to fund their wars, leading to hyperinflation and collapse. In 18th century France, the government issued paper money called assignats, supposedly backed by seized church lands. But they printed them so excessively that they quickly became worthless, fueling the chaos of the revolution. Time and time again, governments discovered the same intoxicating power, the ability to create money without limit. And every single time, it ended the same way, with runaway inflation, the economic instability, with social unrest, with the collapse of trust. The currency we use today is not gold. It is not silver. It is not tied to any physical commodity. It is pure trust. Trust in the government not to print too much. Trust in the central bank to maintain its value. Trust in the stability of the entire system. And history has shown us again and again that trust is the most fragile currency of all. The lessons of Rome and countless other empires are not just dusty old stories. They are a warning, a reminder that the economic world we live in is built on a foundation that has crumbled many times before. Understanding this history is not about predicting doomsday. It's about being aware. It's about understanding the nature of the money you earn, save, and spend every single day. Because in a world of fiat currency, being informed isn't just a good idea. It's essential for your financial survival. So what does this mean for you today in the 21st century? It means you have to think differently about money. And just put it under your mattress or let it sit in a low-interest savings account and expect it to hold its value. The constant, deliberate erosion of purchasing power through inflation means that saving in cash is a guaranteed way to lose wealth over time. It forces you to become an investor, to take risks, to find assets that can outpace inflation. Things like stocks, real estate, or other commodities. You are pushed into the markets whether you want to be or not, just to stay afloat. This creates a society that is increasingly financialized, where the gap between those who own assets and those who don't grows ever wider. Those who understand the game and own assets that appreciate with inflation can protect and even grow their wealth. Those who only earn a salary and save in cash are on a treadmill running faster and faster just to stay in the same place. This system also introduces a new level of fragility. Because it's all based on confidence, any event that shakes that confidence, a major war, a pandemic, a political crisis, can have a disproportionately large impact on the financial system. We are all interconnected in a web of debt and credit that is more complex and more leveraged than ever before. The collapse of one major institution can trigger a domino effect, a crisis of confidence that spreads like wildfire through the global economy. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the reality of the monetary system we live in. A system born from crisis, powerful in its scope, but inherently unstable at its core. It's a system that demands our attention, our understanding, and our vigilance. The history of money is not over. We are living in its most ambitious and perhaps most dangerous chapter yet. This is the Capital Historian. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration of money's history valuable, please like this video.